The district president.
Oh!
Yeah.
All right. We are blessed to have one final presentation this morning, and we are so excited to welcome.
That's what I kind of watch from a distance. I try to stay out of
Keeya Vawar. Keeya Vawar is a survivor of sex trafficking in the early 90s, a powerful voice of hope in a growing ecosystem of despair. Keeya's motivation and passion for empowering youth and women of all ages is inextricably linked to her own story of hardship and survival against insurmountable odds. As an author, speaker, and advocate, she connects viscerally with audiences large and small, and is known for her uncanny ability to help others make real emotional connections with otherwise obscure realities. Keeya's current work is centered on advocacy and collaboration with organizations that rescue women and children from the sex trafficking industry. She works directly with women who have exited the life, speaks at schools and organizations locally and nationally. Her advocacy work is international. She recently published her first book on Amazon entitled 1000 Elsewhere, A True Survival Story, which details her struggles as a teenage runaway being trafficked by a famous record producer in Atlanta, Georgia. Keeya has been a wife and a mother for 20 years and resides in Texas with her family. Please help me welcome Keeya Vawar to the stage.
How are you guys today?
Right.
All right, I'm going to switch out with my readers to the ones from my stigmatism. I'm just at that age. I know you see the red hair, but underneath here is a very billowy, gray hair individual. Thanks to L'Oreal, I'm in Vogue, right? So, I just want to say, first of all, I'm so grateful to be here. And I know we're at the end here, we're on the last leg, and you're like, what does she really have to say? I'm tired, I want to go home. You're thinking about your flights, you're thinking about everything it is you need to do next, right? But I want to first say, where is Dr. Mueller at, who just spoke? Dr. Mueller, I just want to say thank you, because one of the things that he spoke of concerning truth, I really need us to hone in on that, okay? Because Jesus said that I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life. And no man comes unto the Father but by me. And so as light bearers of Christ, we have a responsibility to shine that light. And so regardless of what we're used to, the day and age that we live within, and cancel culture, they're not quiet about canceling the word of the gospel and the truth of Christ. However, we serve a God that empowers us. And so I hope, if anything, that you've been able to take away from this conference and this time, ways to empower yourself and engage within the confines of this culture and within your personal lives. And so if you do not feel like you have the courage, then that's a prayer that you might want to ask God. Give me the courage to be bold in this area, because the enemy, I promise you, has no problem being bold about his agenda. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to say. And hold on, my phone locked up there. The point that I would love to make before I get into my presentation. And this is probably where I should have my readers on, but I got in. So the other thing that I wanted to say before I looked at that point, the other thing that I wanted to say is I'm so glad that Dr. Mueller brought up that old church song, because we used to sing that in Sunday school. I just remember marching, I'm in for it, yes, sir. Great joy in being on beat. Okay, and so when it comes down to a lot of the things that he had to say, it resonated so deeply within me. And let me get my clicker here. The title of my presentation, of course, is Human Trafficking and Human Healing. And so the points that I'll be making and what I'll be talking about, it's pretty bleak, it's pretty serious. I'm going to share with you my story, and I'm also going to share with you what's going on around you. And many of you may already know what human trafficking is, but in the event that you do not, you will come away with an education. And the other thing that I want to remind you is this is not just a time for information gathering. This is something that you want to begin to apply to your life are some of the things that we're taking away, hopefully, at this conference. This is not just a time to get away from the house, get away from your sisters and brothers, and getting away to another city just to enjoy that. But this is a time where you have been able to participate in going in front and using your voices and your bodies in the sanctity of life and upholding our Christian values, which is extremely important. So you've been a part of history. History is boring sometimes. History happens day to day, but history happens in the moments in our lives when we come together and we unify on topics that are very important to our faith. And trust me, our faith is under attack. But I want to give you this scripture. This is Micah 6:8, because this is the mandate that we have. I love how he talks about the church militant. Does anyone know what the church militant is, or did you just listen in as if you knew? Did you know? Did anyone? Can someone raise their hand? I'm going to make you participate, by the way. And so, does anyone know the definition of the church militant?
This side of heaven.
It's us.
It's us. So, what was your...
This side of heaven.
This side of heaven. Okay, so what we're doing as the body of Christ on this side of heaven. And so, you're going to walk away, this is my prayer from this conference, knowing what to do on this side of heaven to uphold your faith and to uphold the sanctity of life. And life is very important to God because he created it, right? And so let's move on here. So, hold on. There we go. And so, who is Keeya? I'm not sure how well you can see these pictures, but I'll show you the top left. That's my family. That's my husband, John. Myself and my 3 children. I have a son named Christian who's 17 years old. He is in the 11th grade. My daughter Ajane, she's 19 years old. She's a freshman at Texas A&M in Galveston studying architectural engineering. My oldest son is 20 years of age, and he is a sophomore at University of North Texas. And he is planning to walk on, because he transferred from Adams State University in Colorado, but he's planning to walk on to pursue his football career in March, so y'all pray for him. He's a linebacker, and it was only last year that I found out, because my football IQ is not as high as it should be. But every time he told me about what he was doing in football, I cheered him on. I was excited. I was at the games. I just found out that a linebacker, because I was thinking, I thought that was the real big ones, right? And so he's only about 180 pounds. But I found out that that's not a lineman, that's a linebacker. But anyway, we'll go with it. So, the other part of my story that I want to share with you, and so I've got pictures here. I've got a picture top right, me on the Life Today studio set being interviewed about my book and about my life and my experiences. I've got me in the middle here with a crowd behind me at NYG. How many of you have been to NYG? All right, did you go this past year? All right, was anyone in Deaconess Tiffany Miner's presentation? All right, you were. So maybe you, I don't know if you remember me, but she brought me on and she introduced me so that I could talk about human trafficking. Then you'll see a picture of me and my kids, because I love to spend a lot of time with them. And then I've got my dog, Bishop. It's hard to tell. He's black and white, mini Aussie Doodle, and he's 21 weeks old, and he's bad as can be, but I love him to death. You also see a picture in the middle. I'm on a podcast, and so then you see a lot of pictures of food, because I am a self-proclaimed foodie, and so I love healthy food just as much as I love bad eating, and so that's just how God has wired me. But God bless me, because I'm working really hard to get back to the girlish figure. Anyway, you're probably like, this is TMI. In the bottom left, you're going to see coffee, because I love all things coffee, and so that's a little bit about me. In addition to why I'm here, is I'm an evangelist in the Lutheran Church, Missouri Synod. My husband is a vicar at Christ Lutheran Church in Fort Worth, Texas. And my husband is from Liberia, West Africa, and he's involved in a ministry that is, it's called a mission network, okay? And so he does church planting with other Liberian pastors. And we also have an after-school program that did have to close down as a result of the pandemic. We'll be relaunching that this fall. And this after-school program is called ASAP Kids. And ASAP Kids is an after-school outreach where we blend word and sacrament, and it is a focus also on child safety. And the reason why child safety is so near and dear to my heart is because of my personal story. And so we're going to get into that really quick. But I consider myself and am considered a lived experience survivor expert. All that means is I've lived a life of human trafficking. I was from the 1991 to 1997 trafficked, okay? And so what does that mean? And so this will be my story, and this will be a picture for those of you in the back who may not be able to see really well. There's an elephant walking and a little baby elephant, and there are situations and circumstances falling on this baby's head, and that reminds me a lot of what I had to experience. And so I just had it there for humor and maybe lavish to some of you, but life is uncomfortable and stuff happens. So at 16 years of age, that's a picture of me at 16. At 16 years of age, and at this point I'm going to need to walk around, y'all. I have ADHD, and I have to move around. Is this the handheld I'm supposed to pull down? I have to move around so I can, it's behind me. Okay, I was doing that for nothing. Sorry about that. I'll just try to make sure you're up. There we go. At 16 years of age, I was living in Dallas, Texas. A little bit about my mother and father. My father was born in Chicago, Illinois, and my mother was born in Columbus, Ohio. And so my father was born to a mother who had 11 other children, and she was unfortunately the neighborhood prostitute. And so he had a very tumultuous experience growing up in and out of foster homes, in the foster care system. And so his escape from that to try to make a decent life for himself was to join the military. And so he served 2 tours in Vietnam with the United States Air Force. And so I came into this world. I have a brother who's 5 years my senior, and I came into this world under tenuous circumstances. My mother, an only child, grew up in a very good part of Columbus, Ohio. She was an only child and a child to a socialite family, and they were doing very well with their life. But she was very sheltered, very sheltered. So she did not realize that by the age of 21, when she was considered, in her era, an old maid, and her mother was trying to figure out, what are you going to do? Are you going to go to school? What are you going to do? Are you going to get married? And her answer was to go with her girlfriends to the non-commissioned officers club and be found so that she could travel the world and finally cause her family to know that her life was going to be good after all, right? And so that's what she did. She met my father, and they had my brother in 1970. I came in 1975 in Madrid, Spain, born on the base, Torrejon Air Force Base. We lived on the economy. And how many of you know that his trauma followed him? So not only did he have the trauma of growing up with the embarrassment of his mother having that unfitting moniker that everyone knew about, not only did he grow up barely with her, but mainly within the foster care system. And his attempt to escape and find peace was the Vietnam War. And so in serving 2 tours, he utterly lost his mind. Before they knew about post-traumatic stress, my father had it. He also contracted Agent Orange. And so what that made for was a growing up experience, and we were in church every single Sunday, Wednesday, tent revivals, you name it. And so I kind of grew up in the charismatic movement, charismania, many would say, I would agree. But I did not grow up in Lutheran. Okay, my husband, who's the vicar, he actually did grow up with his father being Methodist and his mother being Lutheran, and both of them were raised on a mission and sent to the United States to get their education. They both worked in government, and in the early 90s, they actually came to the U.S. as political asylees, seeking political asylum, and then, later on I would meet him and marry, et cetera, et cetera. And so, where was I at, y'all? So, anyhow, I'm laying this foundation because this, that I grew up in, exposed vulnerabilities, okay? And so going to church every single Sunday, having, church friends and youth group and all these things, what was going on in the background was my father was beating my mother. He was an alcoholic. He was on drugs, trying to cure somehow his past and his post-traumatic stress, and he was under tremendous amount of pressure. Yet he allowed those things to take over his life. And it was not uncommon for my brother and I to hear my mother's screams, to see her the next morning with her bruises. And in certain times, we actually ran in the room to stop things that we felt like was insane. And so, from a very young age, I witnessed abuse. By the time I was 16 years of age, I had it up to here. Where's here? Up to here. And I was terrified of my father. I was tired of seeing my mother go through that agony. I was tired of seeing my brother go through that agony. And as I became a little bit older and began to talk back a little bit, then I became also a victim of his abuse. And so at the age of 16, my father was going through withdrawal, in the closet, sweating profusely. I didn't know that that was what it was, but of course, years to come, I would learn that those were the symptoms of withdrawal. And he was trying to get off drugs, mainly because he did not have any more money. This was in the winter, leading into the spring. And he had been without drugs for quite some time. My mother was not able to keep a job very much, and she ultimately started a home-based business. And she became a seamstress to top designers, and then finally she became a decorator herself and had a level of success. Yet it was always interrupted by the home situation. And so when I found my father in that closet, I looked at him in utter terror, and I asked him what was going on. And he gave me his life story, and it was overwhelming to me. And in that moment, I lost respect for my father, because I thought, you need to tell me I've been going through all of this. My mom has been going through all of this. We've been going through all of this just because you chose drugs and alcohol as your way of escape. I thought we were Christians. Well, that offended him so bad that he jumped up and he threatened to kill me. I ran, and he chased me. My mother tried to get in between, and he threw a punch at me that my mother jumped in between. That landed almost 250-pound woman on her chin in the island in the kitchen. That was my escape. I ran, I yelled, I screamed. My neighbors came to my rescue. They called the police, and I had my father locked up. At that moment, I had spent many years planning, what would I do? How would I get out of this situation? And finally, now that I had my escape, I thought very fast. It wasn't too many months prior that I had met a man on a airlines. I was heading to Tulsa, Oklahoma, which where we lived previous to Dallas, Texas. And I met him on an airline. I gave him my phone number, and he gave me mine. I was 16 years of age. He was 27 years of age. We developed a friendship. I told him everything about my life, and he told me he had the answer. Come to Atlanta and live with me. And I agreed. So at 16 years of age, I moved to Atlanta, Georgia. That relationship was short-lived, but he had taken me to a nightclub. How many of you hear the red flags of my story? He took me to a nightclub where I met another gentleman who worked for this gentleman pictured here, who's a Hall of Fame songwriter and record producer in Atlanta, Georgia, and he still is. And that man said, you can come and live with us. Would you like to be in a music video? I knew exactly who he was. Would you like to travel? Would you like to meet celebrities? Would you like to turn your life around? He gave me all the answers, and it seemed very glamorous. And so I was in the video that still plays on YouTube. Don't look it up. I'm not going to tell you the name. But you'll probably find out if you buy the book, then you'll see a lot more about this story. But I was in the videos. I lived a life going to the Versace store, picking out things that I wanted, all for an exchange of services. And when I say these things that are triggering to some people, just think about the elephant and its baby. So these are the things I'm speaking of that were the dung that now planted the garden in my life. So now I'm going to switch to my readers. But the next question would beg to differ. This was in the early 90s and ended in 1997. But why is this important to you? What is human trafficking? Human trafficking is a serious crime and human rights violation against humanity, which involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain some type of labor or commercial sex act. It was the same in the 90s as it is now. A common misconception about human trafficking is that it does not happen in the United States. This is false, because the United States is ranked as the worst country. This is where the demand internationally takes place by and large. It's not to say that these other countries don't already have these situations going on, but we drive the pornography industry, which oftentimes are victims being raped, all the way down to children, and it's being sold for a profit. And so it's estimated that 199,000 incidents occur within the United States every year. That are documented. Human trafficking statistics by state, 2023. I have a lot of information and I have a lot of resources. And at the end, there's going to be a QR code where you can get more resources if you would like, that will help you to understand why it's important for you to understand more about human trafficking, what it is, and how you can stop it. And so I'm going to talk to you briefly about some pretty highly noted cases of human trafficking. Because the other myth I'd like to dispel is that human trafficking only happens to the poor, to the disenfranchised, to the minorities, to people in third world countries. But human trafficking happens to everyone all over the world. And if you are more well-to-do, then you're more prime pick. And so you have predators who have more power and more influence who will be looking to find your vulnerability to exploit it and capitalize on it. How many of you know who Jeffrey Epstein is? All right, and his girlfriend, who were recently sentenced on multiple counts of human trafficking. The girlfriend actually was in part the groomer. And so what that means is she developed a relationship. And so we've been taught just to be afraid of men. But women are equally as involved, because this is an issue of sin and not an issue of gender, race, or social economic status. And so with Jeffrey Epstein, once, and this is personal, if you do not know who this is, again, I have the PowerPoint I can send to you, as well as other articles where you could just look his name up. And you will find that when he was sentenced, he had A-listers, politicians, those in the government, big business men and women who were a part of his network. He had an island where he would take and create experiences, okay? These experiences he would record and he would videotape, hopefully to blackmail these individuals and to command a lot of money. Across the world, according to the Department of Homeland Security, sex trafficking and human trafficking is a $150 billion enterprise. It is a crime against humanity. It is a human rights violation. And so, why does this matter to me? I don't travel in those circles. I have a good life. I take care of myself. I take care of my surroundings. I've listened to my parents. I've listened to those who love me. But the reality is, when the pandemic hit, you would think sex trafficking and all those types of things went downhill. In fact, it boomed. And it boomed based on the internet. And so the other thing that we have to understand when we're thinking about what sex trafficking is, we have to understand that it's not only physically transporting an individual from across state lines. It happens sometimes with people actually leaving where it is that they live. And in this day and age, that primarily happens through the internet. Okay? And so some of the biggest online offenders, Snapchat, MeetMe, Bumble, LiveMe, Grindr, TikTok. Is that Holla or Hola? I don't know. Scout, somebody help me out. Is it Holla or Hola? Hola? Holla, okay. Scout, Kick, Hot or Not, Twitch, Discord, Roblox. And so how is it happening here? Because people are pretending to be those who they are not. They're pretending to be young people. They're pretending to be who they're not, and they're sending inappropriate pictures. And they're looking for people who are lonely. They're looking for people who do not have great connections. All traffickers, which is very similar to the molester, are looking for vulnerabilities. And you would think, oh no, not my kid. Yes, yes, it can happen to your kid as well. And so, what's happening is people are posting pictures of themselves. They're being shared. Those pictures that are being shared, someone is taking those pictures and they are uploading those to the dark web. And they are making money off of those images for years to come, and it's going internationally. This is how it's become a $150 billion industry. There have been many crackdowns as of late, and it's happening more and more, where Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, all these different platforms are beginning to receive lawsuits because they are actually cooperating by allowing this content to be shared back and forth. And so people are getting tired of it. I'll read some headlines. The Texas Supreme Court rules against Facebook by allowing sex trafficking lawsuits. Snapchat. A 16-year-old girl has filed a class action lawsuit against Snap, Apple, and Google. From 2018 until last year, the girl was groomed by an active duty Marine who convinced her to send nude photos and videos. And I want to stop right there because this is not discriminating against whether or not you go to church. Because sin and pain, it crosses all lines. Remember me telling you how much I went to church? How did I learn that song, I'm in the Lord's Army? Sitting in church. But it didn't stop some of the things that were happening around me and my family. Instagram suspends Pornhub's account as lawsuits continue to pile up. TikTok boots Pornhub app amid child porn allegations. Twitter sued for allegedly refusing to remove child porn. And again, child porn goes part and parcel. It's a part of the industry that children become victims, and these pictures are shared, and people are making a profit off of it. That's what makes it fall into that category. So we cannot afford to bury our heads anymore. And because this is such a tough topic, I chose a picture that at least could lighten our hearts a little bit. But the reality is we can't afford. We need to know what to do. We need to understand what is going on. And I hope that you're getting your questions ready, because I have a lot to say about this because it matters. I've got a daughter in college. I have a son in college. And by the way, guys are just equally as at risk as young ladies are. Unfortunately, that's a growing fetish. And so why do we stand up for the sanctity of life? Because these things shouldn't be happening. But they're happening because it's the wages of sin. So we know the wages of sin is death, but we know also the gift of God is eternal life. But what does that mean? That means we are called to be light bearers, whistleblowers. We're called to protect our families. And I have to speak to the parents for a moment, because as much as we do everything that we can to make sure that we can protect parents and grandparents, I don't know all the ages in here, but we do everything that we can to protect our families, yet this is still happening. How is this going on? And I promise you, I can send you a report called Trafficking in Persons by State 2022, and your state is affected, your city is affected. That's why there are task force all over the place trying to end human trafficking. The Department of Homeland Security by 2030 has a Wear Blue campaign. January is National Anti-Human Trafficking Month. That's the month that we're in right now. January 11th is the day that anti-human trafficking is highlighted as a national holiday. This was instituted in 2010. But we have to become informed about these issues so that we can protect our families. And again, back to the parents, I do everything within my power to protect my children. But I realize that my son, my youngest, he loves Roblox. And that's one of the prime platforms where they're looking for young people to get inappropriate nudes from so that they can harm them or meet up with them, and even worse, kidnap them. So I want to talk really quick on the 5 warning signs of the boyfriending tactic, because this is a very broad topic, but this is the one that you've seen it in my story, and you'll see more and more as we uncover and unpack what this looks like. So the 5 warning signs of the boyfriending tactic would have to do with age difference. You saw that in my story, meeting a man who was more or almost twice my age. The next is isolation. So isolation also looks like having conversations with Friends, they can be peers, it's not always age, but sometimes it is. Why don't your parents support us? They don't trust you? So sometimes you can have questions concerning your children's friends, and they get very defensive and upset because they've been in this friend group since they were in kindergarten, and they begin to push back, but the parents are noticing the changes in the behaviors of the friend group and behaviors of their children. Yet sometimes these distances that are between parent and child, because the parent is trying to make sure that this child is protected, and the child is pushing back because these are my friends, they understand me, they get me. And so the trafficker, whether it be peer, someone older, always looks for these vulnerabilities. So they begin to have a lot of conversations that are very detailed about your home life. Something that they might even suggest is that you move out with them. You may not be as bold. They may just suggest that you hang out with them, that you spend more time with them. And in spending more time with them, they more and more drive a wedge of doubt between the people who you trust and them. And they try to empower you. One of the ways, oh, I just realized I'm missing a slide. So number 2 actually is gifting. They begin to give you gifts. Expensive gifts, little gifts, gift cards, Roblox cards, whatever it is that they can give you that will keep you feeling obligated. And then they'll begin to ask things of you. They'll groom you, little things here and there. Before you know it, you're in their grasp. And so others will begin to notice your lifestyle changes. You'll become more distant, maybe depressed. As they're drawing you in, they're looking for opportunities to exploit you. Maybe by this point, they've already asked you to do things that are against how you were raised. And by this time, shame can come into the picture, which puts you further into their grasp. And so what I would say to you, no matter what, trust your gut feeling. When relationships begin to change and they begin to ask too many personal questions, they begin to ask you to push past your boundaries. God has put something within inside of you. The Word of God says that eternity is hidden in the hearts of man. So what does that mean? That means there's a reflection of God that emanates from you as his child. And it tells you that something is not right with this relationship. Don't push past that. So what do you do if this is someone that you know? Before I get into this, has anyone seen The Lion King? I watched The Lion King the other night. I work for an organization that actually rescues women from sex trafficking. And there's 5 ladies, and oftentimes we find ourselves watching movies and we love to watch cartoons. But as I was watching The Lion King for the umpteenth time, I realized how much Scar reminded me of Satan. Does anyone remember where Scar was circling Simba and he was setting him up and he was going to have the wildebeest, or he actually already had the wildebeest to rush down into the valley? And then he had the the laughing hyenas to kind of lead the rush. Then after it happened, how his father, Mufasa, miraculously and heroically came to save him, and then how Scar killed him. And then after that, he goes down to Simba. And what does he do? Does anyone remember?
He asked him what he did.
He asked him, what did he do? And in my mind, I'm like, did anyone else have this response? What do you mean, what did he do? Because the whole thing was a setup. And then he walks around and he circles him. And he tells him to, because Simba's like, well, oh my God, what do I do? And he's like, run away from here. Never come back. The enemy has a desire to take us off of our post, to make us feel like the things that have happened in our lives, the unfortunate situations that have landed in our laps, the things that our friends are experiencing. It may not be happening to you. It may be happening to a friend. Someone is going to come and confide in you if they haven't already and say to you, this is what I've experienced. And it may not be sex trafficking. It may be molestation. It may be something too shameful that makes them feel that it's their fault. But I want to talk to you about consent. In the United States, consent is at the age of 18. And so if you are under the age of 18 and someone lures you into a situation, whether it be just taking pictures of you or whether it be anything sexual, they do not have consent. It is a crime that's punishable by law. And so that's why it is a crime. Sexual abuse is a crime just as much as human trafficking and sex trafficking. So if this is someone that you know, what do you do? Does anyone know? What do you do? Someone comes to you and says, listen, this is happening at home. I went to a party. What do you do with that? Does anyone know? If they come to you and they tell you that something like this has happened, it is a crime. You have a responsibility to speak out to an authority. Because the first thing that the predator is banking on is that the fear that they instilled in that individual or in you, that it will swear you to silence, just like Simba. But I don't know about anybody else who looks at cartoons like this, but I saw the grace of God in Simba's story. Because he went off into his wilderness and he learned Hakuna Matata. He learned how to have no worries, right? But there was one thing that was out of place. It was who he was. He wasn't created to be out there. He was created to be in his rightful place. And so if this is happening to you or someone that you know, report it. One of the things that I lived with for a number of years was shame. This is what took me about 17 years to write my book. I had hatred in my heart for my dad for allowing me to experience what I did under his insobriety. I had hatred, I had unforgiveness, I had shame, I had fear. I beat myself up for so many years. I had something that's called suicidal ideation, where I just wanted to die because I kept rehearsing in my mind, why didn't I go to the cops? Well, I was also told by this producer and his entourage that they would kill me and they would find my body if I said anything. And so the enemy's tactic is always going to be to silence you. Speak up. Speak out. Because you'll be surprised at how many people share that story. And we've seen that in our nation, even with the Me Too movement. When people begin to speak up, perpetrators, sexual abusers, traffickers, they get locked up. So what are the red flags? How do you know if this is happening? Maybe your friend can't talk about this just yet. Maybe you are a parent and you're noticing changes. It does not mean that this is human trafficking or sex trafficking happening, but it's a reason to check in a little further. I would rather be dealing with my children being upset with me, that I looked into their phones, than them to be exploited in the way that I did. So I'm willing to take that. So this is a list of the signs and red flags that might indicate sex trafficking is occurring. The person seems overly fearful, submissive, tense, or paranoid. The person is deferring to another person before giving information. The person has physical injuries or even branding, such as name or tattoos on face or chest, tattoos about money, pimp phrases, things of that nature. Their clothing becomes inappropriate or inappropriate for the weather. The minor may be unaccompanied at night or falters in explaining who they are with and what they are doing. Identification documents are held by another. The person who works long excessive hours is always available on demand. Overly sexual with their age for the situation. A lot of teachers are able to see these interactions. A lot of youth leaders. Signs of unusual wealth without explanation, nice jewelry, shoes, new phones, without any known form of income. Person lives in a massage business or is not free to come and go. And so I have up here how you can report trafficking. You can take a picture of that, or if you'd like a slide presentation, I'm pretty sure that we can make this available. And if you, if you suspect that trafficking is taking place, report it. Report it. I can't say this enough. Some people are afraid to report it because my friend told me not to tell anyone. You can report anonymously. You're not breaking that person's trust. You are saving their life. Because their cry for help may have taken a long time to muster up the courage to tell someone. And this is how you can be a part of the solution. And so I would like for you to lift up your phones. This is my contact information. I've written a book about my life. It's called 1000 Elsewhere, a True Survivor Story. And I go all over this nation, and now at the end of this year, it will be internationally. I speak at anti-human trafficking organizations. I do workshops and trainings on how to dig a little bit deeper into this topic and prepare your organizations as well as churches. I just came from SLO, which is San Luis Obispo in California, Zion Lutheran Church. I did a training with their life group. And this is a life group of primarily grandfathers and grandmothers and great-grandfathers and great-grandmothers, but they have children. And what I've learned is that with their time, they were more than willing to join the task force to be a part of the solution. And so here's another reason I want you to contact me, because I learned this especially at NYG, that if you go to a Lutheran church, you go to NYG, and you're in the youth group, you like giveaways? Am I right? Am I getting this right? You'll have to forgive me because it's only been 6 years I've been in LCMS. I've been charismatic the rest of my life. So I got here just like I did to Texas as quickly as I could. So if you like giveaways, can you raise your hand? All right, you can be a youth leader. That's okay. All right, so what I want you to do, whatever your social media platform, I'm probably on there, but Facebook and Instagram, maybe it's Page, I don't know, but I'm on there the most. Y'all help me. I'm not on TikTok yet, but I plan to get there as soon as I get a social media manager. It's a lot of work. So anyway, I want you to go and I want you to follow me at Keeya Says. That's if you can't get that QR code to work, it's at Keeya Says. I want you to tag me. So I want you to lift up your phone one more time. I want you to take a picture of me. If you follow the directions, you can get a $50 transfer to your bank account, because I can bring gift cards with me. So that, whether that be Zelle or Cash App or whatever, I have the money in my bank account, and I will choose someone who does this. So like or follow me. All right, tag me in the picture you just took of me. Hold on, let me give you my best side. If you're good with Photoshop and you're able to slide 10, 15 pounds off of me, you just might win that $50. But before this day is out, while you're traveling back, I will tag you back and I will let you know that you were the winner. So that's giveaway 1. Giveaway 2 is, this QR code has a link to my book, 1000 Elsewhere, a True Survivor Story. If you make a purchase of my book today, and then you would need to screenshot your purchase, then DM me and write a review. All right, this is going to take a little bit more work, but $100 is at stake with this one. And so I'm allowing you to join the contest that I'm doing with the rest of my followers, that by January 31st, I will announce on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. I believe I'm on Twitter as well, and I'm on LinkedIn. The winner of that. And so all you have to do is purchase the book, and then after you purchase the book, screenshot that purchase, and then leave me a review. So to leave me a review, you gotta be honest. You gotta go and at least read a chapter. You can't just go in there and leave a review. Make sure it's honest, okay? And so thank you so much for your time. What did I just do? Okay. Thank you so much for your time. I pray that your travels are safe, and I pray that you're the one who wins that $50 or $100 transfer by any means that you accept money. Thank you. because I can't leave you with all that and then not answer your question. Yes?
So, what does I understand it's like private, but what is the process of getting somebody out of that situation, human trafficking situation, actually look like it wants to report it?
I'm so glad that you asked that question. The question was, what is the process in which you get someone out of that lifestyle once human trafficking has been identified? In my story, this was long before, in the early 90s, this was long before they had the programs that they do now. In my story, I actually escaped by my brother's help. I finally told my brother after 6 years what had been going on with me, and he actually came and he rescued me out of the situation. Today, what you would do, there are multiple national organizations and local organizations that are anti-human trafficking. And I have resources that I can give to you, but one of them would be the Polaris Project. And they will tell you what human trafficking organizations are in your city. You want to contact an organization that is accustomed to doing this, and the reason why is because they know how to navigate and work with law enforcement. You definitely want to work with your local law enforcement. Unfortunately, the more research that I've done, the more heartbreaking it is that there are many sex trafficking rings that are also in law enforcement and government. But there is always another agency where you would then, if you found out that was the case, you would go to. And so you keep talking, you keep knocking down doors. But this is the reason why the anti-human trafficking organizations are very helpful, because they're accustomed to this. They're on many of the task force. The organization that I work for, not only are they on the task force, but they know and have contacts with the people in the Department of Homeland Security, and they know how to get action, and they know how to get people saved. Anyone else? Yes?
How often are kids kidnapped into it? They're keeping their noses clean, so to speak, and yet they're kidnapped into it.
So the question is, how often are kids kidnapped into it? There's a multiplicity of statistics that would tell you which areas where it's happening the most, very often. So there's, I believe it was 2017 that I have statistics on. It's about 199,000 cases that are active cases in the US, probably many more by now, that are from youth to up to 60 years of age who have been kidnapped or trafficked. And I must clarify, you do not have to be kidnapped to be trafficked. Many youth that are being trafficked peer-to-peer in their schools. Okay, I have case after case that I have read. News article after news article where these cases are within the school. The teacher went to jail. The cheerleading captain went to jail because they were a part of the ring. And so there are many, that it's hard to tell the actual number, but there's at least 199,000 cases of human trafficking, or excuse me, sex trafficking specifically, and the lion's share of those would be children. Yes?
How do you change social media platforms to get rid of or at least negate human trafficking?
So the question is, how would you change social media platforms to negate what is going on? That's happening right now through lawsuits. The more lawsuits and public outcry, because there is public outcry, the more these companies will be targeted, and the more these cases will be won, and the more that they will begin to be responsible for the technology. There's even cases where the credit card companies are now being sued for processing the payments because they know who they're processing these payments for. And so an example of the public outcry that helped to get platforms to change this would be Pornhub. Pornhub is one of the largest in the dark web, where the transactions and interactions and grooming process happened a lot through social media, and they were able to be targeted. So now, I believe Twitter and Instagram and others are following suit in blocking Pornhub from being on their platform. So that's one of the ways. And Michelle?
Yeah, so just a resource that, and I know, I'm sure Keeya could send this to you too, but the Polaris Project, which she mentioned, has maps that show hot spots for human trafficking. So you can pull up a map and see where your school is. It is interesting that human trafficking happens around a lot of colleges, in big cities, on the coast. but it also happens in the Midwest near nothing, right?
Yes.
So you can see those hot spots. This is where phone calls have come in. But if you just look up Polaris Project human trafficking map, it'll show you. So
Again, and so the Polaris Project is one of the nation's leading organizations that gives you all the statistics to what I'm saying. I'm not pulling this out of thin air. I've got, unfortunately, skin in the game where this has been my life. But in addition to my life, there are statistics after statistics, state after state. The Trafficking in Persons report tells you by state, this is how this is happening. And again, the hot spots are highlighted there. Yes? Yes, it would. And so between two minors, what they're noticing normally is happening are the pictures are being shared. And so sometimes there's a threat. There's texting, there's something called sexting. So they're taking inappropriate pictures. And a lot of times this is not happening when these young people are under complete sober, sound mind. A lot of times substances are involved, and so some of the times they're not even aware of the pictures. They're not even aware of the videos that are happening at the college parties, at the parties that the teenagers are being invited to. A lot of times these things are going on, and it's being uploaded, and they are capitalizing by making money on these photos, and they are threatening to get more. And so it is still considered a crime. Sexting is a crime that will put a child, even a minor, on the list as a sexual offender, which changes your life. And so from these things happening, we have to understand that that's how serious it is. Anyone else? Yes?
As a young woman, I am honestly terrified to go out by myself, like day or night. And like I go to school in Chicago, but even in my little central Illinois hometown, I cannot go out by myself. So like, is there any preventative measures that we can do ourselves to kind of ward against that?
That's a wonderful question. She's wanting to know what the preventative measures are to not be placed in that situation, whether a young lady or a gentleman, but especially, I understand when you're a young lady, that being something where, you know, we feel a little bit more vulnerable by that alone. And so I would say, be careful with your phones. Don't walk around buried in your phone. Because there are people who are looking for who's the most vulnerable, someone who's not paying attention, someone who's alone and by themselves. And so I travel a lot, and so I'm very aware of my surroundings. I'm looking, and I'm looking at faces, and I'm looking at who's walking up behind me, not because I'm paranoid, because I'm being aware. And so everything that I shared with you, it's scary, and I understand you have your own experiences, and it's scary, but be aware, okay? Again, I have more. I will encourage you to, you can email me. I can send you a list of things that you can do that will help you, but also you can just type it in, just Google it, on things that you can do to protect yourself. But the number one thing is to be aware. And I'm going to share this with you really quick. I have a friend, she's a retired school teacher, and she's in her, well, she's actually in her 30s. And she went to Walmart after a long day of work, and she went too late, and they closed, and not very many people were in the parking lot, all right? And so she turns to get into her vehicle, and she realizes 3 cars are surrounding her vehicle. And she looks, and she noticed that all 3 cars, they're looking at her, and they're encroaching to where they form a blockade to where if she gets into that car, there's no way of getting out. And so as soon as she noticed that, she stopped, she ran and banged on the door and was able to get a manager to open the door. And once she did that, the car sped off. Be aware. Be aware.
Could you speak to the way women dress or young dress that would encourage or solicit behavior?
Well, I think that question, does dress matter? Dress does matter, but when it comes down to consent, it does not give anyone the right to attack you, any more than going into the gas station late at night to buy gas invites a robber to rob you. And so I do believe that modesty matters, but unfortunately, there are traffickers in my program. The oldest one was 60 years of age, dressed a lot like you. And so I believe that we have to understand that that is important. It is important. But it does not give anyone an invitation to commit a crime against you. Anyone else? Yes?
What if you know somebody in that situation, but they don't want to get out of it?
If you know someone in the situation and they don't want to get out of it, I would say it's your civic responsibility to report the situation. And if you don't want to be involved any further than leaving an anonymous tip, do that. And the reason why is because, have you guys ever seen the image with the iceberg? And then you see the water, and then you see the real problem is much bigger. So whenever someone is being trafficked, you better believe that that is linking them to a ring, which means other people are being trafficked as well. And so I would consider that a civic duty to blow the whistle. Yes?
What if you blow the whistle and you're wrong?
If you blow, that's a very good question. What if you blow the whistle and you are wrong? It doesn't stop you from seeking justice. Because if it seems that something is going on and you're thinking that it's possible that it might be, you have no idea. But the trained professionals who know how, these task force, law enforcement, they know how to research, and they get tips all the time. Whenever they get a tip and it leads to nothing, you've still done what was best, because in your heart, you were trying to protect someone or a situation. So even if you're off, do it anyway, because what if you're right? Yes?
You talked about a friend or someone you know, but I see a lot in bathroom stalls, at gas stations, restaurants, to be on the lookout, especially in the travel corridors of our country, you know, a truck stop or whatever, to look for signs of human trafficking. But I don't know really what I'm looking for. Is there...
So that's a good question. She said, how do you look for signs of human trafficking? Okay, we're told that we need to look in truck stops and things of that nature. I want to underscore the point that Michelle made. Whenever you're dealing with traffickers, they are looking for low-hanging fruit. And so if there's an individual who is a trafficker and they prefer children, then you're going to look for them in schools. And so how you're going to identify these instances with inappropriate boundaries being crossed would be in these places. Okay, and so when you're talking about a truck stop situation, my father used to drive over 38 states as a truck driver. And they have what they called lot lizards. It's prostitution, okay? And so you see a lady inappropriately dressed jump into the cab of a truck driver. Pretty much, that's probably not his wife, okay? It's possible, hey, it could be, we never know, but 9 times out of 10, that's someone who would be engaging in prostitution. And so a lot of the rules of prostitution would apply, but like I said, we have to understand that this is happening in so many other areas that are not always as easily seen, right? And so we're looking for behaviors in individuals. I was at Walmart. Maybe I should start shopping more at Target. But I was at Walmart. Yeah, I shop at Target too. I shop anywhere I can get it, especially on Amazon. Y'all didn't ask for that. But I was at Walmart a couple years back, and I remember looking at, looked like a boyfriend and girlfriend, but then I realized that they were arguing quite a bit. And then I realized when I went to the next aisle, he had pulled her to him like really violently, and then she looked over at me. And do you know what I did? Because I'm just like that. I said, "Are you safe?" She turned away, he yanked her down the aisle. What did I do? I went to the management and I said, "This is happening right now in your store." And I gave a description. And I said, "This is something that you need to tend to." He immediately went and gathered other managers. They went to the doors because they were looking for that individual with that description so that they could confront them. And that's exactly what they ended up doing. I don't know what happened after that, but this is where your voice does matter. Maybe, maybe not. But this could happen anywhere. I give that example because Walmart is the biggest business in the world. And many of us go there because of rollbacks, and I don't know why else, because their produce is not the best, y'all. I don't get our produce from there. Anyway, next question. Yes.
As a Christian or as a pastor, what's a good message of hope that you could share with
Okay, I'm not a pastor, but I do work in ministry alongside of my husband. And a good message of hope, I would say the Bible is filled with good messages of hope. I like to use the story of Job when I'm dealing with victims. On a day-to-day basis, they come to me as they're going through their court cases, and some of them, their children, maybe have been taken away from them because many times the victims start committing crimes as well. Prostitution, of course, we know in most states that's a crime. And so I offer the story of Job because those were things that were happening that were beyond his control. There were things that were happening in his life. I offer the story of Joseph, because many of them have been trafficked by their very own family members. And that seems like it's ridiculous, but there's so many different reasons involved in why this happens. Just like in the same way molestation happens, and many times that is coming in family members and people who are close and who know the family. But the message of hope is all throughout the Bible. I think the other message of hope to those who are coming out of that lifestyle is Jesus with Mary Magdalene. He was aware of her state. There's so many different times and places in the Bible where Jesus is saying, listen, turn from your sin no more. And then you receive healing and you receive everything that you need. I'm a living example of what it's like, so I use my story, what it's like to have done some of the most shameful, embarrassing, terrible, despicable things. Yet and still God has redeemed me. Why? Because he loves the broken. He loves the brokenhearted. His word says that he's near to the brokenhearted and to those who are crushed in spirit. And so I use my life as a hope. But my life is steeped in Christ. I'm hidden in Christ. It's because of him. If it weren't for his finished work on the cross, I wouldn't be able to stand here. I probably would have taken my life. And so, but the Bible is full of hope. Yes. Yes.
How have your experiences affected your look on pro-life versus pro-choice?
How have my experiences affected my outlook on pro-life work versus pro-choice? Profoundly. Profoundly. I want you to understand that I'm a healed woman that's standing before you who's still walking out her healing. And the healing that I found was in Christ, but it was also in therapy. I have post-traumatic stress disorder. I have bipolar disorder. I have ADHD, and probably some other monikers that used to limit and label me. Because in that lifestyle, I became pregnant several times. And I talk about that in my book, that I chose abortion as a birth control method. And then God saved me. I'm sorry, I know that's very charismatic of me. But when I had an encounter in 1997 with God, he made himself real to me. And he taught me through that experience, number one, that he forgave me. Number two, that those babies are with the other 60 plus million. And they're praising him. I believe with the angels. I believe they're saying, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. But to answer your question, it changed my heart and made me decide to value life. That life was valuable even if it did not have a choice in whether it lived or died. Yes.
I have two questions.
Come on, Pastor Mike.
And they're separate. Number one, are individuals ever trafficked in their own homes by their own families?
Yes, they are. So how does this happen? In the same way that molestation happens, for a multiplicity of reasons. It's sin. And so there are cases that I've read where there are families who drug and substance abuse is an issue, mental illness in some cases as well. And they will sell their own children, or they will molest their children and film it, take pictures, and they will upload it to the dark web. Many of them belong to, or there are cases where they belong to organizations that celebrate pedophilia. And so it's propagated in so many different ways because some people don't believe, who don't have Christ in their heart. They don't believe it's wrong. They feel like they can love whoever they want to love. And that love is expressed whether physically or any other way. There are those who believe that they should be able to marry children. There are those who marry children.
My second question.
Yes, sir.
I have a friend who I suspect is being trafficked, and I believe she is at a trafficker's house or a John's house right now, and I have the opportunity to go and rescue her. Can I do that?
You should not. Do you know why? Did you hear what he said? I have a friend. I know where the trafficking is taking place. If you are not trained to do an extraction, I would suggest that you not put yourself in harm's way. Because many of them, when they make threats that they will kill your family, they will. And they also mark you. And so, whether that's marked for death or marked for trafficking. I would not take it upon myself to do that. I would take it upon myself to use the FBI tip line or contact your local tip line with the police department. Leave that information once. Leave as much information as you possibly can, and you can do that anonymously. But do not take matters into your own hand and put yourself in harm's way. Great question. Anyone else? I can do this all day, but I know you. Oh, hold on. Here's another one. Yes.
We have had experiences where we've done praying outside of Planned Parenthood, and we saw a girl that we suspected she was being trafficked and brought to abortion against her will. She was like, there's just lots of different things that I think that. Well, I have the hotline on my phone, so I called them, and they sent some police. Well, first of all, the hotline just kind of, actually the hotline, they found out it was Planned Parenthood, they didn't want to get involved. And there were some police in the parking lot across the street, so we went and talked to them. And they actually went in, and they said, we thought that was against her will. And they went in and they talked to the people that worked there, and they came out and they said, oh, no, they said it's fine. There's nothing going on.
And so, I hope you all heard that. So, is your question, what do you do in that case?
Is there a specific, somebody that you know that would be maybe not afraid to deal with Planned Parenthood? Because we know that a lot of the sex traffickers take their people there for abortion.
Yes. And they do that because babies are bad for business in the world, right? And so what you want to do is get in touch with your local anti-human trafficking organization. This is their purpose. They actually they're going to be able to come with information. They're going to be able to come, and many of them already have Planned Parenthood on their radar. There are organizations that have raised funds to avidly and vehemently fight against Planned Parenthood. This is why you want to research the organizations in your area and find out what their projects are and get involved, but also to let them know this is what has happened. Don't give up. If you feel like you have given a tip that was not followed through, find another organization. Make as much noise as you can. I believe that people's lives are worth it. Anyone else? All right, looks like that's my, what's the music that plays whenever I don't know, it's my cue.